Hi everybody, Connor Nacarado here with PhysioStrength. I recently did a workshop on the rotator cuff with regards to preventing shoulder injury, and I wanted to follow it up with just kind of an overview of some of the anatomy of the rotator cuff. So what I've done here is isolated out kind of the shoulder girdle, right? So this is the front, here's your pec muscle, and the front of your forearm here. So as we kind of turn to the side, we can take a little closer look at some of those rotator cuff muscles, right? So this big guy here is your deltoid. We're going to take that away actually because the rotator cuff sits underneath that, okay? So when we're talking about the rotator cuff, we're specifically looking at this muscle, this muscle, this muscle, and this one inside here, okay? So I'll go ahead and we'll keep those highlighted just so it's easier to see them, okay? So these highlighted ones in yellow are all the rotator cuff muscles. Now, what we can do, oops, not that one. What we can do is we can just look at where those insert, okay? So they all come in around and insert onto the humerus here. So the humerus is your arm bone, right? The shoulder joint, if we kind of peel away some of the connective tissue layers here, we can see that the shoulder joint is a ball and socket joint, okay? So you've got this great big ball that sits on this little socket. So if we go ahead and just isolate this shoulder girdle right now, you can see how small that socket is compared to the size of this, right? If we look at just the size of that compared with the socket that it sits in, the ball is a lot bigger than the socket, right? So what's interesting about the rotator cuff is collectively its job is to maintain the congruency of the joint, right? So the rotator cuff should be pulling this ball and seating it in that socket, right? So that it doesn't, displace and things like that. What tends to happen with the rotator cuff is these muscles on the backside are usually really weak and lack endurance, okay? So when we're talking about rotator cuff strengthening exercises, it's really important to be strengthening these muscles because of their job with keeping the shoulder joint itself in alignment. So if we go ahead and take away, I'm going to hide these rotator cuff muscles for just a second, and we can look at the backside of that joint, right? Those muscles pull this in toward the socket, right? Without those working properly, some of those bigger muscles like your deltoid, your biceps, your pecs, things like that, which you can't really see the joint here as we put those muscles on, but there. So as you can see that with those bigger muscles can pull this up, they can pull it down, they can move it. So we really want those rotator cuff muscles to be nice and strong to help provide stability. So that's all I wanted to do there, is just kind of show you guys some of the anatomy of it, right? And just explain, the job of the rotator cuff, because I think a lot of people really think it's just to rotate the arm, when essentially the rotator cuff should be really maintaining the congruency of that joint. See how all these muscles pull the ball in toward the socket, right? Their direction of their fibers goes from here up to here, right? And same here, they all go in, right? Their main job is to really support the joint. So I'll put a couple links in the video to some great rotator cuff exercises that you guys can try, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks.